The story of Caleb Wiley, a successful businessman who was murdered under mysterious circumstances. Caleb Wiley was a 45-year-old successful entrepreneur whose home was located in the picturesque suburb of Portland, Oregon. His construction company, specializing in eco-friendly building, quickly gained popularity due to its high-quality work and attention to detail. Caleb was a man who genuinely loved what he did, and his passion for his work was contagious to everyone around him. He became something of a local celebrity, featured in newspapers and magazines, and invited to radio and television shows, where he shared his success story and business secrets. Caleb was actively involved in his community. He was often seen at charity events and regularly donated money to local projects, such as building new sports facilities and supporting animal shelters. Everyone in town knew him as a kind-hearted person, always willing to help others. He often organized charity dinners, bringing together dozens of people to support important causes. Caleb loved to say, "True success is not just about money, but about what you do for others." His friends and colleagues knew. These weren't just words. Caleb genuinely believed in the power of good deeds. He was married to Lisa, a 40-year-old middle school teacher. They met at a charity event in Portland, and their romance quickly blossomed with her gentle and kind nature. Lisa was the perfect match for Caleb. She loved children and taught mathematics and natural sciences. Her students adored her for her patience and ability to explain complex things in simple terms. Lisa was not only a devoted wife, but also a loyal friend to Caleb, supporting him in all his endeavors. Caleb and Lisa seemed like the perfect couple. Their cozy, well-maintained home was filled with family photos and art pieces Caleb had collected over the years, a great admirer of 19th-century Western art. He often visited galleries and auctions to expand his collection. The Rivers home was adorned with paintings depicting scenes from the Wild West, cowboys, prairies, and Native Americans. It was his personal passion, which he eagerly shared with guests, always ready to tell the story behind each painting. However, their perfect life had its shadows. Caleb and Lisa tried to maintain the image of a happy family, but cracks began to appear in their relationship. Caleb often stayed late at work, explaining it as necessary for business expansion and new projects that required his attention. Lisa believed him, but increasingly felt lonely. She suspected her husband might be deceiving her, but she hesitated to confront him directly, fearing it would shatter the illusion of their perfect life. In recent years, Caleb had become more secretive. He spent less time at home, frequently leaving on business trips that seemed never-ending. Lisa couldn't understand what was happening. Various theories formed in her mind, from an affair to financial troubles. She tried to talk to Caleb, but he always brushed off her concerns, insisting everything was fine and that she had nothing to worry about. Despite the growing tension, Caleb remained a loving stepfather to Walker, Lisa's son. From her first marriage, he helped him with his studies, supported his interest in art, and even invested in his small graphic design projects. They often spent time together, discussing the works of great artists or simply playing chess. Caleb genuinely cared for Walker, and it seemed like a sincere attachment. But there was one thing Caleb hid from everyone. Behind his friendliness and care was a dark secret: his affair with Walker. Their relationship began by chance. One evening when Lisa was late at work, they talked for hours about life dreams and fears, and the conversations gradually became more personal and intimate. Walker was young, ambitious, and full of energy, and Caleb saw in him what he had once wanted to achieve, but couldn't. Over time, their friendship evolved into something more, and they both found themselves in the whirlpool of forbidden passion. Walker became more than just a stepson to Caleb. He was someone who understood him, who shared his interests and passions. Caleb felt alive and young around Walker, as if he had regained his youth, but he also knew that their relationship was a ticking time bomb that could explode at any moment. Both Caleb and Walker understood that their connection had to remain a secret, and that revealing it would destroy their lives and hurt Lisa. Thus, Caleb Wiley's double life continued. He tried to maintain a facade of normally remaining a loving husband and caring stepfather. But with each passing day, he became more entangled in his web of lies. No one around him suspected what was really happening, and Caleb continued to play his part until his secret led to a horrific outcome that would forever change the lives of everyone who knew him. The morning of October 21st, 2021 began like any other. Lisa Wiley, returning home after a morning walk with the dog, immediately sensed something was wrong. The house was quiet, too quiet. She noticed that Caleb's car was still in the driveway, even though he was supposed to be at work. The door to the living room was slightly ajar, and Lisa, trying not to make a sound, stepped inside. She called for her husband, but only silence answered her. Lisa felt her heart begin to race. She moved closer and suddenly saw Caleb lying on the floor in the living room. Blood was everywhere, on the carpet, on the walls. On the furniture, her eyes widened in horror. Caleb was motionless, his body mutilated by multiple stab wounds. Lisa froze, unable to believe what she was seeing then, as if waking from a nightmare. She screamed and rushed to the phone to call. The police officers arrived at the scene within minutes. Detective Naya, known for her determination and sharp mind, led the investigation. Upon arriving, she immediately realized this was not going to be a simple case. The scene before her was horrifying signs of struggle. Broken furniture, bloodstains on the walls. Everything indicated that the murder had been committed in a fit of rage and desperation. Detective Naya first approached Lisa, who was in a state of deep shock. Lisa sat on the porch, her hands clutching her head, repeating over and over, who could have done this? Why? The detective tried to calm her down, asking simple questions to piece together a preliminary picture of the events. Lisa explained that on the morning of the murder, Caleb wasn't supposed to be home. He always left for work early. She hadn't noticed anything unusual when she left for the walk with the dog, nor had she heard any sounds that might have indicated a struggle or attack. Detective Naya knew time was of the essence, and they needed to act quickly. She ordered her team to search the crime scene for any clues that might help solve the murder. Forensics began their work, carefully collecting evidence: fingerprints, blood samples, bits of fabric. Special attention was drawn to a knife found near Caleb's body. The murder weapon appeared to have been taken from a kitchen drawer, suggesting that the perpetrator was likely familiar with the house and knew its layout. Meanwhile, neighbors began to gather around the house, watching the unfolding situation with anxiety and curiosity. The local residents were shocked and scared, as nothing like this had ever happened in their neighborhood. Many knew Caleb personally, and no one could understand who might have wanted him dead. A neighbor named Martha Peterson told Detective Naya she had seen someone enter the Rivers house that morning, but couldn't make out who it was. Her words added more intrigue and mystery to the case. Officers were questioning witnesses, but no one could give a definitive answer about what had happened in the house that night. Some said they had heard loud noises, but hadn't thought much of it. Others claimed to have seen lights in the Rivers windows, but assumed it was just a late dinner or evening TV. Watching, Detective Naya meticulously recorded all the statements, trying to piece together the puzzle of this horrific crime. The police also found Caleb's diary lying on the desk in his office. It was a thin leather notebook that seemed well used. The first pages were filled with notes about business meetings and future plans, but toward the end, there were more personal entries. Caleb wrote about his life, how he had been feeling lately. It was clear he was under a lot of pressure, feeling guilt and anxiety. His last entries seemed nervous, even desperate, as if he were afraid of something or someone. Meanwhile, Detective Naya received the initial DNA analysis results from the crime scene. The DNA belonged not only to Caleb, but also to someone else. It was a person who was not in the police database, creating additional challenges for the investigation. But it soon became clear that the DNA belonged to Walker Caleb's stepson. With each new discovery, the mystery only grew more complex. The secrecy surrounding Caleb's death took on new, darker shades, and Detective Naya knew she had a tough job ahead of her to unravel this complicated case. How did a respectable husband, successful businessman, and caring stepfather end up at the center of such a gruesome crime? What led to this brutal murder in a quiet suburb? The answers to these questions were yet to be uncovered. The first and most obvious suspect was Walker Caleb's 23-year-old stepson. Walker was Lisa's son from her first marriage, and although Caleb had raised him since his teenage years, their relationship was far from perfect on the surface. They appeared to be a normal family, but behind the facade of a loving family, there were many unresolved issues. Walker had struggled with emotional problems since childhood, and his relationship with Caleb was often tense. Caleb was a strict and demanding stepfather, often trying to guide Walker onto the right path, which led to conflicts between them. Moreover, the police discovered that in recent months, Walker and Caleb had often argued over financial matters. Caleb was extremely frugal with money and refused to give Walker funds for his numerous hobbies, which had led to several heated arguments. But things became much more complicated when the police uncovered the existence of a secret romantic relationship between Caleb and Walker, radically changing the course of the investigation. As Detective Naya delved deeper into their relationship, it became clear that Caleb and Walker were involved in a clandestine affair. This explained why Caleb defended Walker, even when he behaved inappropriately. Their relationship was deeply hidden from everyone, and for good reason. Such a revelation caused shock and confusion among their close circle. Perhaps this forbidden relationship led to the tragedy. Walker began to realize that their relationship was unacceptable, and that his mother Lisa might discover the truth. Finding himself in a state of emotional crisis, he could have decided to take desperate measures. But Walker was not the only suspect in this case. Detective Naya also considered Lisa Caleb's wife and Walker's mother as a possible perpetrator, although Lisa appeared to be a loving and devoted wife. At first glance, there were signs of anxiety and secrecy in her behavior. She clearly did not know about the affair between her husband and her son, but she might have suspected something. Lisa often complained to friends that Caleb had changed. In recent months, he had become colder, spent more time away from home, and refused to talk about what was going on. She had also noticed that the relationship between Caleb and Walker had become even more strained. She might have suspected an affair, but she probably never imagined that her own son was involved. What if she accidentally discovered the truth and, unable to bear the betrayal, decided to get rid of her husband? Or did she act in a fit of rage upon learning that her husband was leading a double life? Additionally, Detective Naya could not ignore Caleb's business competitors as a successful businessman in the service industry. Caleb had faced several threats from rivals, trying to push him out of the market. Someone had even left threatening notes on the windshield of his car. Could one of his competitors have decided to eliminate Caleb, to get rid of a rival once and for all? Every new detail, in this case, only added more confusion to the investigation. But Detective Naya knew she needed to get to the truth. Every piece of evidence, every detail, every word could be the key to solving this horrific murder. Now she had to determine which of the suspects was desperate and ruthless enough to commit such a terrible act. As the investigation deepened, Detective Naya realized that beneath the outward respectability of the Wiley family lay something far darker. At first glance, it seemed that Caleb and Walker had nothing more than a tense father-son relationship. But the further she progressed in her investigation, the more evidence emerged of a contradictory bond between them. Meanwhile, Walker was becoming increasingly nervous. Detectives noticed that his behavior was erratic. He constantly avoided meeting with the police, and during interrogations, his answers often contradicted each other. Eventually, his psychological state collapsed, and he ended up in the hospital with a nervous breakdown. The doctors diagnosed him with bipolar disorder, which explained his mood swings and strange actions. Naya realized that she urgently needed to speak with Walker after his discharge from the hospital. She summoned him for another interrogation. Now he looked exhausted and broken under the weight of the evidence and the pressure from the detectives. Walker finally broke down and confessed that he and Caleb had been involved in a secret love affair. He described how Caleb had promised him a new life, how they had made plans for the future until everything spiraled out of control. He felt betrayed and used when Caleb began to distance himself and tried to end their romance. This provoked his rage and desperation. He recounted that on the night of the murder, he went to Caleb to talk, but the conversation quickly turned into an argument, and in a fit of anger, he grabbed a knife from the kitchen table. Walker couldn't remember all the details. He was in a state of shock, but he knew that he had dealt the fatal blows to Caleb. His account matched the evidence found: the crime scene bloodstains and fingerprints on the leg of a chair and on the door. Walker confessed that afterwards he felt an overwhelming sense of guilt and fear. He couldn't understand how he'd come to commit such an act, but he also felt a sense of relief when he finally revealed the truth. Walker realized that his relationship with Caleb had been a mistake, but he also knew he had done something horrible and irreversible. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he finished his confession for Detective Naya. This confession was a turning point. Walker, although appearing shattered, finally admitted that he had killed Caleb in a moment of emotional breakdown caused by their tangled and unnatural relationship. Now the police could confirm the motive for the murder and close the case. But no matter how clear the picture of the crime had become for everyone involved, it was only the beginning of a long road to healing from the devastating truth that had now come to light. The trial of Walker began in early spring 2023 and immediately attracted the attention of the local media. Everyone knew this would be a challenging case, filled with emotional revelations and unexpected twists. The courtroom was packed to capacity. Journalists, friends, and relatives of the Rivers family waited for the proceedings to begin. Walker looked worn out and tired, facing a past that could no longer be hidden. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Jennifer Hayes, was determined. They presented the case as a premeditated murder, committed in a fit of rage over the end of a forbidden love affair. Hayes meticulously built the case, emphasizing that Walker, as a young adult, was fully aware of his actions and their consequences. She presented Caleb's diary as key evidence of their relationship and the growing tension between them. The defense, led by experienced attorney Caleb Welsh, focused on Walker's mental state. Welsh argued that his client had been unable to rationally assess his actions due to bipolar disorder and was in a state of emotional distress on the night of the murder. The lawyer insisted that Walker needed treatment in a psychiatric facility, not imprisonment. He brought in psychiatrists who confirmed Walker's diagnosis and described his mood swings, depression, and anxiety, which could have led to an inadequate reaction to a stressful situation. The trial lasted several weeks. Each day was filled with candid testimonies and raw emotions. The most poignant moment came when Lisa Wiley Walker's mother was called to the stand. Struggling to hold back tear years, she spoke of her suspicions about her husband's infidelity and how her world collapsed when she learned the truth about their secret affair. Her testimony deeply moved many, and the courtroom was filled with a tense silence as she spoke. Lisa pleaded with the court to consider her son's mental state and offer him help, rather than simply locking him away at the final stage of the case. The jury retired to deliberate. Everyone anxiously awaited the verdict that would decide Walker's fate. Walker was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Thanks for watching True Crime Cases.